may be looking for. But we are in the process of launching our third Harold Alfond grant, which starts January 1st of 2025 and will stretch into 2030. It's a 5.5-year grant that we're very fortunate to have support from the Harold Alfond Foundation. What we want to do is just bring people up to speed on exactly what the grant is, some of the changes from the current grant we are in that's closing here in a week or so, and then bring you up to speed on maybe some of the different changes, not crazy changes, but some changes in our new grant. As folks know, and maybe some folks don't know, joining the Maine Workforce Development Compact allows our business partners, associations, and municipalities to help train their frontline workforce. Charlie will be diving into more details on qualifications of who is a frontline worker, but this is a way that we can help upskill Maine's employers in professional development. This grant is designed around our frontline workforce and allows us to cover 50% or $1,200 per employee per year on incumbent worker training. In the design of our grant, and you can see our results through June of 2024, June 30th, 2024, we facilitated training that exceeds 27,000, and by the time we finish the next week or so, we'll have broken a 30,000 number that we've trained over a three-year period. We currently have almost 1,800 compact members, which represents 330,000 employees in the state of Maine, and Maine has about 700,000 employees that are in our current workforce that are working. The center has been successful in reaching 95% of Maine communities, and you can see the map with all the dots on it. We've moved north of $10 million in incumbent worker training to employers to help upskill their workforce. As I said, the frontline workforce makes up 82% of our workforce, and traditionally only less than 20% of professional development training goes to frontline workforce. It mostly goes to supervisors and C-suite. So as we developed our grant, we're continuing the effort to help upskill Maine's frontline workforce. And again, 48% of Maine's workforce is represented in the compact, and the majority of our compact members, 75%, are fewer than 100 employees. Matter of fact, the majority of our work is small and medium-sized businesses. Next slide. This is the training investments that have taken place over the last 31 years, or almost 31 years. Our traditional Maine Quality Centers program and Put Me to Work program, which has an annual state appropriation, is ongoing, and that's a current program that is still operating. We were fortunate to acquire a starter grant with the Alfonds, what we call Grant 1. We're currently in the Grant 2 process and have also been able to infuse Maine Jobs and Recovery Funds. And then our new grant, which is really what we're going to focus on today, is the $75.5 million gift to train 70,505 folks. This gift is part of a $163 million project to provide workforce training to Maine employees, and we're seeking other resources to complete the work we do. And again, the incumbent worker training program is a one-to-one match with the dollars that we provide. For every dollar we provide, the employer is matching $1. So over the next 5.5 years, that will be a match of $30 million. We'll be putting $30 million in incumbent worker training, and the match will be another $30 million. So next slide. And with this, I'm turning this over to Charlie Collins.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for joining us on a Friday afternoon. As Dan said, we are in the midst of a revolution, I think, in helping Maine's frontline workforce find opportunities for upskilling and training. And as this chart says, We know frontline workers make up 82% of our workforce, and that is really the target that we're hoping to serve. So Dan sort of gave a quick understanding that we're feeling that there are dollars usually available for the folks in the C-suite, and those presidents, vice presidents, and directors often can find their professional development. So we're really asking our compact members to look below those levels at folks who really serve at your front lines with these grants, and to help skill that workforce up. I'll go to the next slide. And so here are the training requests. So the types of training, if you've been involved with us earlier in the earlier grants, you know we really don't have a lot of cutouts. We don't have a lot of areas that we say no to. But here's some key things to keep in mind. The trainees who receive the grants must live in Maine and work for a Maine-based organization. The training should be for frontline incumbent workers, as we said before, and the training that enhances an individual's skills and advance their careers. We have been seeing quite a bit of training that is really training or orientation that happens annually to impart company policy. And we're making a distinction under the new grant that we're going to approve training requests for those trainings that are actually building skills. So as we get closer to reviewing your training applications, we may be in touch with you and let you know that we think that if it's an orientation that you're really imparting company policy, that's not training that's building a skill. It's giving them knowledge, it's giving them important information, but it's really not a skill. So we will be denying those types of trainings. But trainings through the Maine community colleges are encouraged. But as you know, we have almost 2,000 third-party trainers who have participated in this training, and so that is allowable. So you could use your grants with third-party training, or even through in-house training where you might have folks qualified to do training in-house for you. Things that, that we won't fund are training for C-suites, the volunteers, your board members, and/or elected officials. Those are trainings we haven't approved before and won't as we go forward. The required annual training that I just mentioned, that is, again, mostly to impart company policy and not necessarily build a skill. So those trainings would not be funded as we go forward. Reimbursement for travel expenses and employee wages cannot be expended through this grant. And we won't pay for things like publication or subscriptions to publications. We've had some people say, well, my professional development is this publication I get every year. That would not count as an allowable funding request. And then things that are non-professional development training. We really want this, and our generous grant funders really want these dollars going into the hands of people working at the front lines and enhancing their skills. Next slide. And some of the trainings that we've allowed and will continue to allow, the industry-specific trainings that have been going on for the last nearly three and a half years. Examples in financial service compliance training for employees in banking, as an example. Or any other type of role, whether it's the medical field, manufacturing, obviously the finance field that's indicated here, the trades and construction. Any of those industry-specific trainings are allowable. Role-specific training is allowable. So examples, a LinkedIn advertising course for someone in marketing. That's a role-specific. Somebody in marketing to understand how LinkedIn advertising works is clearly an allowable grant. Professional development for career advancement. An example here is a medical assistant taking a course to earning a degree in nursing, as an example. And of course, your company-wide training that does, again, imparts knowledge and skills that allow them to do their job. We give an example here of the diversity, equity, inclusion training that's been going on in many companies. And then, of course, those core soft skill trainings. trainings that are dealing with difficult customers, conflict resolution, or even hospitality, better hospitality training for workers, all allowable through the grant. And then lastly, the training required for certification or licensure. So that's your CPR training for childcare employees, as an example. And again, we often get questions, is this training allowed and that's training allowed? And what we'll be doing with all of you is obviously taking your questions as we go along with your training requests and being able to answer those. But I think you can see from this slide, it's really a wide area of training, and very little has been denied over the last 3.5 years. So I continue here, Chris, is this my slide? Yeah, great, thank you. New grant cycle covering funding from 2025 to 2030. We are getting ready to open up funding requests starting in January. We don't have a specific date, but at some point later in December, those funding requests for the new year and beyond will start, and you'll all be receiving communications from us when we can accept those. We're also sending you a new MOA because we've updated some of our processes and we want to communicate what those processes are. They're mostly electronic in nature, and we want you to understand how you're going to access both the funding requests and then the follow-up data that's required as part of the grant. And then, of course, the new MOA goes over really the importance of our data. The grants, often when people ask us what's the catch for us to receive these grants, our answer back is data. We just need data back. And so the new MOA sort of dives in a little deeper the importance of that data and why we are asking for it and how we use that for you. And so some important dates. We've already just been distributing our new Memorandum of Agreement to our existing Compact members, and obviously new Compact members will receive the same new Memorandum of Agreement. So that's been going out since the beginning of December. As I said, sometime mid to late December, we'll be opening up the funding grant opportunities and allow you to apply online for those new grants. And then January 1st is our all new requirements that are laid out in the Memorandum of Agreement will be in effect. All right, Chris, do you want to take on what's staying the same?
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie. So what is staying the same? Same funding. Our dollar amount per year per frontline worker is staying the same, has a max of $1,200. And again, that requires a match. This is 100% employer driven. This really is about what your needs are in support of your workforce and your employees. We're using the same request process. So you'll be able to request funds prior to the start date and then submit completion data at the end of the training. We do have a new grant management tool that we'll be rolling out in February. So the portal for an application will look a little bit different, but we'll have information that's coming out about that. Dedicated support. We still have our regional workforce development coordinators that a lot of you have worked with. Those are staying the same. We're adding an additional person that will be serving the region for Kennebec Valley Community College. But those are our frontline staff that are there to help you through any of your challenges. And we have a couple of them who are on the webinar today that will actually be answering your questions as we're going through the webinar and helping us with responses at the end. And then as Charlie alluded to, data collection. Data collection is critical for our funder. So we will be collecting data on the students or the employees who are enrolled in the trainings, on completion data. We'll have exit surveys and follow-up surveys, and all of this is a requirement of our funder. What's being updated? So we are moving to a one payment model. So under HAF 2.0, we did a 80%, 20% split with payment. So we did 80% at the time of the funding request, and then the final 20% at the end of the training. We're moving to one payment at the end of the training. We will have 45 days from the date that a training is complete to be able to get the data from all of our compact members. At the time that you do that closeout, where you're coming in with all of that completion data, that's when we issue that payment. So payments will be going out at the end of the trainings, and we have up to 45 days from the end of the training to get all of that data in. We are going to be regulating the funding. What that means is we obviously have, over the 5.5 years, we have an allocation of funding for each of our years. As requests come in, we will put those against those budget line items for each of the years, and we may be reaching out to compact members to ask for minor adjustments depending on where we are with those payouts. We did, with HAF 3.0, institute a $250,000 annual employer cap. What that means is if I am an organization, I can receive up to $250,000 in any calendar year for my compact member training requests. That is something that we will watch, and we will have conversations with compact members if they're getting close to those dollar amounts to let them know. And then within HAF 3.0, there is the ability to build in a 10% administrative fee in those requests. And that's really to support the work that you're doing with getting in all of the registration information, the grades, processing of that request. That is included within the $1,200 max per employee. And if you have questions about how to build that into your proposals, you can reach out to any of our workforce development coordinators. We have a new grant management system you heard me allude to that will be coming online in February of this year. One of the things that we've realized is that we need a system that is more seamless and more user-friendly for our compact members. So we will have information as we are getting ready to go live. We'll have training opportunities to be able to use the portal. But some of the major pieces that will be of benefit to our compact members is you'll be able to see where your request is in the approval process. You'll also be able to see all of the training requests that you've put in for a given period. From an application standpoint, our expectation is that it's going to be a little bit easier for applications if there are requests that some of our businesses have that are repeat training requests. So maybe they have a group of staff that they cycle through with the same training multiple times a year. There'll actually be an easier application where you'll be able to pull forward some of the data from that prior application as to what you're doing right now, which is entering in a new request for each of those trainings. One of the things that has been a priority for us is to do targeted industry sector work. We have Liz Love, who joined our team, who is leading up our industry sector engagement, and we will be doing targeted trainings and targeted reach out to specific industry sectors across the state. One of the provisions within HAF 3.0, which is the same as HAF 2.0, is the availability of scholarship dollars for your employees. This allows up to 2 scholarships per a semester for community college courses and provides up to $212, Charlie?
That is correct.
$212 per scholarship. So really, if you think about this from a professional development standpoint, each of these trainings that we're doing through the compact member funding requests is allowing your employees to get the skills that they need within their roles. And then it's really about creating that pathway. So for folks who maybe have not completed a degree or started a degree, these scholarship dollars can help to get them into those classes so that they can start to work towards an associate's degree. And then finally, like our core book of business, and Dan covered this when he talked about Maine Quality Centers and Put Me to Work, we still have the opportunity for customized training through Maine's community colleges, where you can work with any one of our 7 campuses to be able to develop a training curriculum and program to meet the needs for your workforce. Data collection. Charlie's talked about this a little bit, but it really is a key provision that we have with our funder. And really what we're looking at is aggregated reports. So when we're gathering this data with enrollments in programs and within training topics that we're using, what our funder is seeing is it's seeing all of that information pulled up to the high level. So what we're reporting on is that we've served, Dan showed on one of the earlier slides, 27,000 people as of June 30th. So we showed the total reach of our program and engagement. We, on our side, need to be able to have the individual contact information for any of those students, which allows us to be able to build a comprehensive learner record. Why that's important for both you and for your employees, what it demonstrates is it demonstrates the training that they've gone through using these dollars and starts to build a professional development record where they're able to look at it and see what they've accomplished. It's also a great tool when you're talking about professional development and academic pursuits to be able to map things out and provide that guidance. We do ask that all of our participants engage in the exit survey. This is what allows us to be able to track the benefits of this program. It's also a place where, in a lot of times, we'll get the stories that we want to be able to share the success with these programs, how it made how the training was, how efficient it was, allows our partners to be able to adjust their training. And then we also provide a participant follow-up survey. This allows us, after the training has stopped, to be able to reach back out to those individuals and see if there have been any additional needs and additional engagements within training. Heather.
So what's next and what can you expect after the call today and the foreseeable future? The first is resources. I'm going to cover a few resources that we've put together on the next slide, and I'm going to share a link in chat. A reminder that this will be emailed to you as well as a transcript of this call. Number two is the MOA. We are sending out the MOA in stages. We started on December 4th, and we expect to wrap that up in the beginning of January. So if you have not yet received that, you will be. If you refer to the resources, you can actually read through a sample MOA that's on there so that you know what to expect when you receive it. Number three, as Chris alluded to, we have a new grant management system coming in February of 2025. In preparation of that, if you have filled out a funding request in the past, we are transitioning to new forms in the next week or so. It's collecting the same exact information, but they might look slightly different than you're used to. So please just know that that is normal and something that we are preparing for. Our ultimate goal is to make this process more user-friendly and streamline it for you. And last but not least, we're always looking at ways that we can engage Compact members and provide value for you. Rolling out in 2025, expect a survey on exactly what it is that we can do for you and what would be more beneficial in the workforce development realm. We're putting together a catalog of custom trainings available through Maine's community colleges and offered right on our campus through the expertise that we have both on the academic and non-credit side. And as Chris alluded to as well, we're looking at industry sectors and what we can do to build that workforce pipeline from pre-hire training to incumbent training and beyond. So a lot to look forward to in the new year. This QR code and bit.ly link lead to the link that's in the chat as well. So you'll see on the website that there's a copy of the MOA, an FAQ document. There will be previous session recordings, instructions for our systems as well. So how to submit that funding request, as well as direct contact information for our workforce development coordinators, who are one of our greatest resources. So with that, I know the chat has been pretty busy, but I would like to open it up to a live Q&A. And what I would ask folks to do, if you have any questions, at the bottom of your screen, if you're not used to using Zoom or use another platform, there's a little heart icon that has React. And if you click on that, there's a raise hand feature. If you have a question, if you could hit raise hand, and we'll call on folks in the order that they appear. So with that, any questions? And of course, with chat as well, if you feel more comfortable putting in a question in the chat, we certainly have folks here. Any questions? And thank you to our coordinators that are on the call today, Diane Crockett and Kristen Wygand from CMCC and YCC. And first I have Abigail, and just remember everybody is muted, so take yourself off mute as well. Abigail, your question?
Hi, we were wondering if for self-directed programs or courses, they don't necessarily have a set start and end date, but the person's, guessing that, okay, I'm going to finish it within this amount of time. what if they go beyond that and then something comes up, so they might go beyond, it might take them longer than they anticipated, so they go beyond that 45-day threshold after the end of the training? What happens then? Are we ineligible for the funding at that point?
So what you would want to do is you would want to reach out to us that when you know that that date's going to extend beyond the original one. And what we'll do is we'll update your training requests. So you're going to work with your workforce development coordinator. Where are you located in the state?
We're in Portland.
Okay, so you're going to work with Maureen, who's based out of SMCC, and Maureen will adjust that end date to better align with the actual end date of your program.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, open communication on that. The sooner that you know, the easier it is for us to go in to adjust that. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, you're next.
Hi. So I'm just wondering, I've been holding on a couple of submissions for things that are coming up, knowing that I was going to be attending today. Should I continue with the same process that I had been using until the new format in February comes out in terms of submissions for trainings?
So Carol, what you're going to do is the first thing is we'll get your updated MOA back. So once you have the updated MOA, you'll want to fill that out and get that back to us. We'll then be sending a note out to our compact members with the link to the new forms. It's going to live on the website in the same location as my understanding, but the forms are going to look a little bit different. As soon as we have those up and those have gone live, you'll be able to start putting in those requests. And then when we transition to the new grant management system, we will do notifications to the compact members and trainings prior to. That's when you'll use that new system to be able to submit those. But it's your forms are going to ask all the same questions as Heather said. They're just going to look a little bit different between now and February when the grant management system goes online.
Okay, just one quick follow-up question. I received the initial request to sign the MOA. I sent that out, but I haven't received anything back yet.
Okay. And I know that we are working through Heather getting communications out to folks when that's been accepted. So what will happen is all of our compact members who have returned their MOAs, we'll get a notification out to them, and then we'll get a link to those new forms so that you'll be able to put those requests in.
Great. Thank you.
We're hoping within the next week as well, Carol. And there will be an email when those go out. Next I have Rachel.
Hi, can you talk a little bit more about the scholarship and how that works? And then as completely separate question, I know there's a big need for CNC machinists or people trained in CNC. And I just haven't been to the community college's websites to see if any CNC trainings are being offered, and if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the CNC, and then I will let either Heather or Charlie talk about the scholarships. Rachel, where are you located?
I'm in Portland, and I work with employers. I work
Yep.
with a lot of manufacturing employers, so I'm not an employer myself. I'm just here.
Okay, so we have SM, so Southern Maine Community College, Central Maine Community College, and YC all have different CNC programs. In the southern part of the state, we have other precision manufacturing that happens at KV as well. And if you have questions on a specific location, what I would encourage you to do is I'll put my email in the chat, but you can also go through the website regarding connecting with our campuses. But I'm happy to connect you with some of the different campuses so that you understand the programs that are out there for the businesses you're working with.
Great. And hi, Rachel, good to see you. Yeah, so on the scholarships, those are particularly paying for half of a 3-credit course at a Maine community college. And so they could be live courses, online, hybrid, whatever the connection course is. The idea there is to allow existing compact member employees who may have received even some training, right, under what we call the stage 2 training, to sort of say, hey, I want to keep going. I see something at a community college, or I see a series of courses I want to take. And those grants are are being set up again in a one-to-one match to say, yeah, keep your learning going, keep your skill development going, and here are scholarships. Students can get up to 2 of those scholarships per semester, and we have 3 different terms or semesters. And so that's getting 6 course scholarships per year. And so they have to be students who are working at least part-time, and they can't be going full-time to a community college. They have to be less than full-time and also working at least part-time with that for the compact member organization.
Thank you. Before I call out on the next question, something that Kristen actually responded to is something that we should cover as well. As I mentioned, MOA rollouts will be going out through the beginning of January. Our process requires you to submit a request for funding before a training starts. We know that we're going to be a little late starting in February or starting in January. So we will have a grace period in January, I believe until January 17th. So we will have the full details in the emails that we send out, but just be aware of that. Don't panic if you haven't signed your MOA by January 1. Next question, I believe I have Emily.
Hi. We offer some trainings for our entire employee group, including some employees who are not from Maine. If we were to apply for this program, can we still do that for only the Maine employees?
Yeah, do you want me, Chris? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so what would happen in that situation, Emily, is let's say your total employee number, just picking easy numbers to work with, are 100 employees, and 90 of them are from Maine. You would put in the request to cover the 90 employees.
Okay, and so that's still acceptable as long as we're just applying for the Maine employees.
Correct. Yep. And if you have 10 employees and let's say only 3 of them are from Maine, you would put in the request for the 3 employees. The other 7 you would have to pay for where they're out of state.
Okay, but it's still okay if it's the same training, if it's like a group training?
Yeah, because what you're doing in that situation is you're putting in the request for those folks who remain residents for their portion of that cost for that training. So I'm going to use the 10 people as the example. The cost for that training, let's say, is $100 per head. And you've got 10 people that are in that class, right? With the same 3 employees who remain residents, you would put the cost in for $300 towards that training. You would be responsible for the other costs associated to those non-Maine residents.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Abigail, I
I'm sorry, it really
apologize.
bears reminding everybody, it's a 50-50 match.
Correct.
So Chris's example.
You would put in for $50 per head, not 100 per head.
Well, when you apply, you are giving us the full retail value. You're getting 50% of what you asked for in the grant, just to be clear.
Thank you. Abigail.
Sorry, I think that was my hand from earlier.
Okay,
I'll lower it.
wasn't sure. Okay, any other questions? And I may have inadvertently lowered somebody's hand by accident. So if you just had your hand up and that was my fault.
It looked like Morgan had a heart, so I don't know if Morgan had a question.
Jody.
Hi, thank you so much for this webinar. Question, so I work in the human service industries, and I just want to clarify, we have our direct line staff have to go through certain classes and recertifications in order to maintain their certificate. Those recertifications, and one of them is annual, those recertifications are still acceptable? Thank you.
Yeah, Jody, great question. And they are. One of the points I made that's accepted are anybody going for certifications and certainly recertification and licensure to stay in the work you're doing. Again, we're looking for skill building, and we know those are repetitive, but in the cases of required certifications and licensure, we will allow those to go through because it allows them to essentially keep doing their work.
Great, thank you so much.
Great question, thank you. Okay, any others? Okay, with that, just make sure we'll stay on for a few moments just to make sure any Questions that are currently being answered in chat are answered on there, but a reminder, we'll send out this video, the deck, and resources to everybody within the next hour. Jody, do you have another question?
I do. So part of what we are doing is we're using blended learning and certain learning platforms, especially for some of our clinicians to get their CEUs. We use a blended learning CPR first aid. Is any of that reimbursable at all? Like the cost of the learning platform that we're using, there's a cost per student. Can that be reimbursed? Thank you.
Jody, I'll ask a couple questions. With that particular learning platform, you're saying the access to the platform is built into the cost of each course they're taking?
So there's an initial cost which runs about I just saw the figure and I can't remember it. But there's like an initial cost for X amount of students.
I see.
To have access to this.
So what we'd ask you to do is take the cost of the construction and that initial cost and divide it equally among each employee, and that's what you're putting the request in for. In other words, if there's initial cost and then there's a cost per the instruction.
No, there's actually just there's an annual cost that gives us a certain amount of seats that we can use in that platform.
Okay, so you take your number of employees and divide it over that, and that would be what you're putting a request in per employee. Remember, we've got to get to the per employee because we max each employee out at $1,200 per year of what we give. So if they meet a $1,200 threshold, it means you're putting in $1,200 as well.
Right. So for example, if the cost of the learning management platform was $2,500 per year for 25 seats.
Right.
Could we then put in a request for the $2,500 and have it divided by the 25 seats?
You would have to do that exactly. If you've got your 25, you're putting in a request for 25 employees. And honestly, Jody, I wouldn't put it in that you're getting access to a learning platform. I would say here it's 20, because you do have to have a title of a training and you have to have a description of a training. When it's starting, when it's ending. So what you need to do in your application is I've got 25 employees. They're taking and if it happens to be different topics, you're going to have to put a request in differently for each person because we have to capture exactly what the training is exactly for that employee.
So let's say, Jody, in that scenario, you were doing just a DSP training, right? A direct, what you would have is 25 employees for DSP training, and the cost is the access to that platform, right? That's what it costs for that course per employee. So in that scenario, your total cost is $2,500. Your compact member funding request would be for $1,250 because there's a match requirement. So you'd be paying the other $1,250. And you would give us the 25 employees who are taking that training. And that cost of the $1,250 would be divided over the 25 employees. And if you're doing multiple to what Charlie's saying, let's say that one $2,500 cost, but it covers 2 trainings. You now have to break that up over those 2 trainings. So you might have one that comes in for DSP for the number of employees that are receiving the DSP training and another for another training.
Okay. I think when I'm talking about the learning management system for the clinicians, that's probably going to be a lot, that will be more difficult to be able to put in for. But I think in answer to, can I do it for our blended learning CPR first aid? That answer would be yes, because I could continue I could do blocks of students, even though they get assigned in a certain month. I could do blocks of students for that amount.
Jody, where are you located?
I'm located in Augusta, and Diane Crockett has been an angel working with us.
So talk with Diane and she can help you build out that request. But
Okay.
to Charlie's point, what we have to be able to do is we have to be able to attach it to a training request,
Okay.
right? So part of the instructional cost for that training is that platform that they're accessing, right? So that's part of the cost that goes into figuring out how much it actually costs you per student to provide that training or have access to that training.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Abigail?
I do actually have a question this time, just to make sure I understand the admin fee. So, for example, if you have a course that's $100 per employee, you could submit for like $110 to include that admin fee, but that comes out, then they're only eligible for whatever it is.
Right. And in that scenario, the extra $10, right, has taken off of their total 1,200. And that's why we say it's always something to keep in mind.
Right.
Just because that does eat up a portion of the training dollars that are available.
Sure, okay.
Any other questions before we wrap for the day? Rachel?
Sneaking one more in. Can a nonprofit, actually, I guess I already know the answer to this. Yes, a nonprofit can apply, right?
Yep.
And so
They
like
just-
an educational, like that does, maybe they're going to train some staff on specific, educational processes. They could apply for this as well.
Yeah, any employer in Maine, and I think we'll hear folks say that this is one of the easiest to access grants for municipalities and such. The only folks that are not eligible are elected officials, board members. They have to be employees, frontline employees of the organization.
Great.
Okay, last call. All right, thank you everyone for attending. We'll stick around here for a few minutes if anybody wants to have a one-on-one conversation. But look for those resources to hit your inbox within a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
And Kristen and Diane, just wanted to check in with you as well. I didn't scroll through the chat, but are you comfortable with everything has been answered? And I can do a transcript of it too if we need to. I had it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wanna do the transcript too, that would be good.
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome. We'll do. I'll send that out to everybody.
I actually have a
Yeah.
question for Charlie myself.
Heather, do you want to turn off recording?
I can.